The Stuff by Larissa Thomas. Helena, pronounced Helena, but known online as _Helena_ in upside-down reverse text, carefully applied liquid liner to her eternally greasy eyelids. She had seen another girl in her feed using the same brand. Yes, it was a brand from an anti-vaxxer, but Helena was willing to put her murky values on hold for the perfect cat eye. She was confident this would make her just as pretty, if not prettier, than the girl whose feet she saw it featured on. Helena wasn't vain. She just happened to notice that the guy who was on his way over for their first date liked a lot of the horror model selfies, and Helena knew she could pull it off, too. Helena was tittering with excitement on a physical and emotional level for her rendezvous with Michael Adam. He'd made a short film about a warthog from a hell dimension on Jupiter that Helena fucking loved. Michael Adam looked as you'd expect. Every single t-shirt he owned was black and had a movie or TV reference of some kind on it. He wore relaxed fit jeans and dressy casual shoes, was always on time, introverted, sometimes forgot to put on deodorant, but Michael Adam was very comfortable being Michael Adam. Helena, however, was slowly being existentially crushed and enveloped under the expectations of the Miss Nostalgia porn sash she'd constructed out of old R.L. Steins and B-movie covers. She was a cherry slushy thirst trap for horror and nostalgia dweebs, but if they had ever sucked their way to the bottom of her Jurassic Park collector's cup, they would realize they were actually sipping their own psychic guts through a fat plastic spoon straw. Luckily for Helena, she'd only been found out once before horror became her thing. She'd tried on philosophy and psychology for size, but it was just way too draining having to remember all of those dumb facts. She'd had to move cities when her liberal arts student boyfriend realized half of her collection of Nietzsche was actually first editions that she'd just stolen from his apartment and sloppily scrawled her name in. Helena had a personality deficit, a mental bulimia, hoovering up culture, spewing it back out. The problem was that she was never full. There would never be enough action figures, obscure cartoon references, or ironic 80s movies to fill the constantly hungry tardigrade floating in the void that is her soul. For tonight, Helena had shaped her pubic hair into a pentagram, but it resembled more of a deconstructed pizza. Either way, she felt that it would be pleasing to Michael Adam. She knew he liked pizza from scrolling through 6 years of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle memes on his Instagram feed. She wondered if he'd scrolled through her feed yet. He must have. Helena's apartment was like a well-organized hoarder's playchest. eBay wins, thrift store finds, retro reboots from Urban Outfitters that guys were too stupid to know were vetted by a large corporation versus discovered via a genuine childhood affection. So far, Helena had spent over $43,000 on her curated personality. If you asked Helena about the books on her bookshelf, she could give you a PowerPoint presentation in under 30 seconds, but if you asked her anything more, she'd change the subject. Of course, Helena didn't have time to read all of those books or watch all of those movies or listen to all of those records she claimed to love. Bitch had to sleep. After Helena had finished shellacking her face and teasing out her hair, she fastidiously spread the Final Girl lotion, endorsed by her favorite gore horror Instastar, all over her pale body. Helena wasn't sure that it smelled so great, but she'd been told it captured the empowered essence of Laurie Strode. To basics, it smelled more like Creature from the Patchouli Lagoon, but they were basics. Glancing at her Tetris watch, she realized she only had a few minutes left to finish getting ready. She knocked back a mini-thin with 2 shots of vodka and did one last dusting off of her 80s tchotchkes, lighting and relighting the living room with candles and lamps. She positioned each VHS cover and board game so their titles were clear and ready to become talking points, depending on what Michael Adam was into, assuming the interests he shared online were genuine and not just lures for nerd girls. Helena was ready. She took a deep breath and waited on the vintage velour couch in her living room. She adjusted her Evil Dead bodysuit, her floppy tits barely contained in the fabric clearly sized for someone much smaller, possibly even a child. As she smoothed out her black pleated skirt, she noticed her signed Linnea Quigley workout horror tape on the top shelf of her bookcase wasn't visible enough. She knew Michael Adam would be impressed by it because he loved Night of the Demons. The top of her bookshelf was a good 6.5 feet, but anxiety spread throughout Helena's innards. What if this was the deal breaker? What if he wouldn't realize she was his soulmate? She stacked a couple of Rubbermaids, full of the books she actually read, like Kelly Armstrong's Bitten series and Lily Singh's How to Be a Boss, and teetered upward. She strained against the weight of her ironic baubles and jewelry, and she pulled, contorted, reached, and the VHS fell, its corner jabbing her right in the fucking eye. She blindly grabbed for something to hold on to and brought the entire bookshelf filled with her endless trinkets on top of her. The Switchblade Sisters DVD that Quentin had reissued, and her Star Wars lightsaber, and her Stranger Things pin-up Demogorgon. As the hordes of shit fell on top of her, pulverizing her knick-knack knockers, bric-a-brac breasts, squishing her pinhead, crushing her Elvira red-painted toes, splattering her insides, her IUD, puncturing her stomach from the propulsive force of the bookshelf landing on her belly. As she lay on the floor, she stared upwards, wondering why she hadn't thought to decorate her ceiling. And then there was a knock at the door. She tried to call for help, but all she could muster was a wet cough. Michael Adam didn't have much of an attention span, so after about 5 seconds he let himself into Helena's apartment, holding the cheapest bottle of whiskey you can buy. Not J&B like Helena had been fantasizing about. "Whoa, cool," he exclaimed as he took in the tragic museum of Helena's desperate need to be adored. He didn't even notice the gasping, dying young woman on the Spaceballs John Candy ring-spun rug. She tried to call out for help, the light, bright, magical, shining light dimming in her eyes as she internally bled to death, her insides like an elevator in her favorite Kubrick film. A single tear rolled down her cheek, ruining her flawless cat eye. Her maroon-lined lips parted as she exhaled her final breath. Michael Adam put down the whiskey, still oblivious, and began fingering all of Helena's acquisitions as if they would become his, should they pair. He uttered a few more whoas and snapped photos for his Instagram. He giggled at her pizza-shaped landline phone. He really did love pizza. He finally spotted Helena. The quiet, paralyzing horror he immediately felt at the sight of her corpse gave way to delight as he began stuffing her most hard-to-find finds into his He-Man backpack. After he picked out his faves, he nonchalantly attempted to call 911 on her landline, but of course, it wasn't hooked up to an actual connection. So he stuffed her pizza phone in his bag. He left her apartment before an anxiety attack set in. He'd have to call from outside on his cell phone. Not many people knew this, but Michael Adam had a fear of real death and gore.